your page. As soon as I can find it. There you go. So now people, your friend group, will see it.
Hi everyone. Good morning.
We have one person watching.
Oh, it'll light up.
Did he give you paper? Yeah.
Hmm?
Okay. I asked if he gave you paper.
He did give me
He does
paper.
usually.
How close do I feel? Like, is this a good distance?
He wants you to eat it, like put it right in your mouth. But you don't have to.
Okay.
Just
5 FM, The Sun, every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Hey, when I'm not
Making
on the
fun of
radio,
you.
I'm working with folks just like
It's
you
okay.
to help them
It's easy.
buy and sell
Do it.
homes.
I know.
I'm proud to say that my team, the Baker Realty Group, has been helping
He
people
provides the
buy and
material.
sell
What am
homes
I
in the greater
supposed to do,
Sunbury
ignore
area
it?
for over 10 years. Information
Say
about
again?
buying and selling a home
Said
is
you
available
provide the
on my
material.
website,
What am I supposed to do, ignore it?
bakerrealtygroup.com, on Facebook by searching
This is
Baker
all about
Realty
you.
Group, or by calling 608-575-6731. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the Sun Prairie Real Estate Show with Bill Baker and Laura Stanfield.
And
Brought to you by the Baker Realty Group.
Welcome to the Sun Prairie Real Estate Show with your host, Bill Baker.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Hump Day and the Sun Prairie Real Estate Show. I'm Bill Baker, your host, and glad to have you with us today on a yucky, mucky day out there. It's kind of ducky, I would say.
Ducky.
Ducky. It's a ducky kind of day. We'll go back to our British accents, do we? Oh, yes. It's not foggy, but it's ducky.
Okay.
Okay?
British weather.
It's British
Yeah,
weather,
actually,
that's
it is.
right. Hey, we designed this show about 7 years ago, and it's to provide you with information and to educate you on the process of buying or selling a home or investing in a home. And we do this every week. We take your ideas, your thoughts, and put them together in a package and then get it back to you and talk about it. And we've had some really great subjects. Now, today we've got a very important subject, and one that you need to be aware of. I don't want the eyeball rolls. Don't be going, oh, God. I don't need NIMBYs, which is not in my backyard conversations today. But we're going to talk about affordable housing, and it's something that that's you've got to know about it. You have to be aware of this. And, you know, across the country and right here in Sun Prairie, many people are finding that they can no longer afford to live in their communities that they prefer. In fact, it's true for big cities, and it's also true for small communities like ours. And the availability and the pricing of housing is just going crazy right now. And that's both rental and home ownership. And so we wanted to talk about it. This is Fair Housing Month. April is Fair Housing Month. And to really get us going on this, we wanted to bring in a specialist, an expert. And so we're going to talk.
A prestigious guest.
What's that?
A prestigious guest.
Yes, and she came in with her entourage waving. There was a, hello.
And here I left my tiara at home.
You got to pull that
It's in the car.
microphone closer to you. Do this.
See, I told you.
Ruth, do this.
It's right there.
She's fine.
It's
I can
going
hear
to
her
attack her.
fine.
I just need to
Good.
talk about her.
There you go.
I got you turned all the way up.
All right.
Try it again.
Hello, hello.
There you go. I love it. I love it. Hey, so let's do it this way. Before I introduce her, what you need to know is, like, Wisconsin employers, Sun Prairie employers are having a difficult time recruiting workers to fill thousands of job openings. I mean, they just can't get them. And it's partly because of the shortage of housing that we have that's affordable. And you're going to hear this called affordable housing. You're going to hear it called workforce housing. And what you need to know is that we don't have any. It's just not there. And we get a lot of conversations about this and what to do, especially the politicians. Politicians are really good at it. Yes, we'll be talking about affordable housing during blah blah blah. So we're gonna chat about that. But the statewide housing inventory levels are so low in Sun Prairie. Oh my God, 7 houses you have for sale. 7 houses. I know. 7 houses. And when you have something that low and then have median prices that are going through the roof, which is fair, by the way. I mean, it's our economic structure. It's not because of malicious intent. It's the market. The market is driving up those numbers. And when you have escalating prices like that, a lot of people fall back to rent, or they stay renting. And then the occupancy rates stay high. Not the vacancy rates are low, occupancy rates are high. And that's what we have to talk about. And so affordable housing is the thing that you're hearing everywhere. Here's what I want to say to this group. Came up with this today. I know.
Just made it up.
I am scaring her over there. No. Because I combined it with a little Keller Williams thing in there from my past. What's the one thing we or you can do that can help with access to homes or affordability of homes? Is it as an individual? Is it a community? Is it a government? What can we do? And that's the question that we're going to start with. But before we do that, we have to get to this wonderful lady. I'm going to tell you that this is one of my favorite people. She is one of the most dynamic executives that I know, and she's our leader. Proud to have her as our leader of the Realtors Association of South Central Wisconsin and South Central MLS. And so, Ruth Hackney, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's so exciting to actually be here in person this time.
I know, I'm digging it.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Last time you weren't on.
No.
That's right.
We had a
On the
phone call.
phone.
Oh my gosh, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It feels good to have people in studio.
Yes.
It
Really does.
Yeah. The plastic divider is gone. Like, that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Realtors Association for a second. The Realtors Association of South Central Wisconsin is an active trade organization made up of realtors and affiliates. And you can take it from there.
So, I mean, real estate is our passion, and that goes for our membership and our staff as well. Our job is to increase the level of professionalism, the level of education, and to create a market where working together, like we do in Wisconsin, is an everyday thing.
And housing is one of them.
Housing is
Fair housing is one of them.
Fair housing is one of the most important things that we do.
And before I get carried away here, which I already have because I'm excited to have Ruth in the studio, you're listening to 103.5 WLSP, the Sun, right here in the beautiful Sun Prairie Media Center studios. We're underwritten by those wonderful folks at the Bank of Sun Prairie, the Baker Realty Group, and of course, Wintrust Mortgage. So, got to get that. That's, now we just paid the bills. Now we can continue our conversation. The Realtor Association, our group of realtors are more than just about selling houses.
Right.
We do a lot of stuff. And our association, I think, kicks butt. And people don't realize it. They don't know. And really, I think, in one of the things I read is we are the voice of real estate for South Central Wisconsin.
Yep. I mean, there is no industry that does more to welcome individuals into community than a realtor and then the affiliated organizations. You're the welcoming committee to a neighborhood, to a home. You are the welcoming committee to home ownership. It is an incredibly important piece of our economic structure, and housing is an economic driver. And we're seeing that now more than ever. And so housing and our association and ensuring that those ideals that we as a community think are important, the availability of housing for all, the availability of individuals and families to be able to invest in home ownership and to earn the dividends that comes from that is our number one priority and our number one goal. And regardless of your background and regardless of where you come from, you should have that opportunity, and we believe that, and our members believe that fully.
Now, if you're on Facebook right now, you can always leave a message in the message area. If you would like, you're welcome to call us with questions or comments, 608-825-0930. I'll pick up your call. This is a subject, though, that what kills me is I hear a lot of talk about it, but I don't hear any specifics of what needs to be done. You know, everybody's great at saying, oh, yes, we need more affordable housing. Yes, we need more affordable housing. First thing is the apartments. Not in my backyard. We realize how important they are because a city, a town, a village will collapse if you don't have rental properties. And people don't realize that. Because
you need to have a mix of housing, right?
Well, you do, but that rental it's the folks that haven't, either they don't want to buy a home because they're not comfortable with it, or they're not capable of buying a home for whatever reason. Could be down payment, whatever. Credit, something like that. But we have folks that are also in the community, our service organization, our service people, from your wait staff, bartenders. I mean, you could go teachers, police officers, firemen, that may be in that rental pool, and we have to have that rental pool. If you don't, they go somewhere else. If they go somewhere else, businesses don't want to come to the city, right? If the businesses don't come to the city, the tax base falls off. Tax base falls off, it means taxes go up. So it's kind of a vicious little circle there.
Sometimes people want to rent too, just to get to know an area. There's a lot of people moving into the Madison area, so they just want to rent a bit and see what comes up. A lot of people are trying to figure out, how do I sell and buy, and what do I do in the meantime if the two don't coincide. So some people are putting stuff in storage and renting. So for a lot of reasons, people rent, and we need to have a mix of that.
You know, one of the strategies that I use with my sellers, the people that are wanting to sell, is to consider renting. Go ahead, let's sell your house. We know you're going to get the Mac Daddy of prices. I mean, we know the market's up there. You're going to get that the equity that you deserve. I mean, it's your house. You've taken care of it. Never did we ever think that the house would be an investment like that and have the returns that it does. But so I've suggested to people, and I've had people take advantage of going out and renting. Here's the problem. They just took a rental property away from somebody that can't rent. See the circle?
Can't buy?
They can't buy, so they have to rent. And so they're sitting there. And
rents keep going up too. So is renting even affordable? I know.
And nationally, the numbers that are out there is that people who are renting typically do pay more towards their monthly housing costs because they don't have some of these same restrictions that getting a mortgage comes with. You know, mortgage, you have to really meet some criteria to ensure that you can afford that house. So what's interesting is as people are kind of deciding to take that step into home ownership, they're realizing that they actually pay less than they did renting, and they're actually investing in their own benefits and their own future wealth.
You mean when they buy a home?
Right.
Exactly. It's just that there's a hump to get over sometimes. And I just think it's communications and education, and that's our role as realtors. We're not just about selling homes, and that's the purpose of this show, is to help people with that. And we've experienced it, we've witnessed it. Where people go, wow, I didn't know I didn't need a down payment.
I didn't know I didn't need 20%.
There's another
one. I didn't think that. I'm
know.
surprised, but they do.
It's just, I know. But
so like I always say.
What do you always say?
Curious, ask questions. What does it hurt to just ask, right? And see what's possible for you. Might not be right for you. Find out.
Well, and it might not be right for you today, but that doesn't mean that in 6 months or a year, with help and education, it couldn't be an opportunity for you. And so consistently asking the question, finding professionals in the areas that are important to you and using them as resources and guides is incredibly important. So finding a realtor you trust, finding a mortgage lender you trust, incredibly important to make those realities come true.
Agree completely.
This kind of market, similar to the foreclosure markets, were you in the business back then?
I started in the industry in 2008,
Ooh,
so right as things fell apart.
Wow. Had you known,
Had I known, I loved
here
it
you
though.
are.
So did I. Those were some of my best years.
You learned a lot. Everybody learned a lot during that
period
period of time.
Compassion became a really important piece of the
gosh.
industry at that point.
Empathy.
I started disliking banks. I watched banks treat
No
people.
offense taken.
I know. I was gonna say she's right.
No.
Yeah.
Well, no. She knows what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some short sales where, I had a couple short sales that were $1,000 away, and they said no. $10,000 away, no. One had, I could sit here and talk about this all day.
Yeah.
But I had a team of people processing all those short sales. But what I was going to say is, this type of market has a way of cleansing itself. And what I mean by that is realtors. It cleanses the realtors. Because your good realtors, the ones that are committed, they're into their education, they stay focused, they stay up to date on their classes, their trends, they stay around, and the others go away. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, I'm not speaking negatively towards it. I'm just saying that, well, it's a tough business. And right now, I think it's the toughest market I have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm really good at writing offers right now that don't get accepted.
Yeah.
And thank you very little.
Mm-hmm.
But
There's a lot of strategies that come out of this, right? So I think it makes you better at what you do.
right.
Yeah.
You have to educate your buyers and your sellers more so than you ever have, and you have to think outside the box about how can we get this offer accepted.
Sure.
It just makes you better at what you do.
Right.
All of us.
Well, and in times of high competition too, the understanding that you have as an agent or as a buyer and seller of what you need to know for fair housing becomes all the more important, because when you're looking at 10 offers and potentially buyer love letters and things like that, understanding your requirements by law to ensure that a decision is made fairly is critical. And it is one of the base things for creating a market where all individuals have the opportunity to own a home.
So talk about that more. You just said something very important that I don't think people realize. And you talk about the process of reviewing those offers. And what do you mean about fair housing? What's that have to do with
letters and what kind of an impact they can have?
Well, we've often heard, if you're in a market where there's multiple offers, write that letter. Tell them about your kids and your dog and why you would be the best steward of their home going forward. But what we've actually learned is that those create incredible opportunity for discrimination, unintentionally or intentionally.
Sure.
Discrimination does not care whether it's intentional. It happens unintentionally. That's that implicit bias that we've learned so much about in the last few years. So, if you're a buyer, understanding that love letter is actually not going to support you, and in many cases sellers don't want to see them anymore because they don't want to open themselves up to that liability. As an agent, understanding that when you're presenting the offers to your seller, it's really important that you present them fairly and without commentary about who's actually writing the offer.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the terms that they've included, you look at the amount that they've offered, you look at the way they're paying for it and what kind of a loan they're able to get, and maybe the lender they're working with, whether or not you trust them, the agent they're working with, whether or not you trust them. Those are the things that are really important, but it is incredibly important, especially right now, that anything that could be perceived as discrimination, or letting them know that you're a family, or letting them know that, even names sometimes can open up the gates in terms of discrimination, because, if somebody has a name that is perhaps Indian, that may unintentionally put their listing or their offer a little lower, and that can't happen in 2022.
No.
It has happened far too much in the past.
Sure.
And it's time right now for agents and for sellers and for buyers to right those wrongs.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. I like love letters. I like
Do you?
I do like them. I think that love letter has to be reviewed more.
More coaching on the side of the listing agent, maybe the buyer's agent, everybody.
Well, because we are completing, as the realtor, we are completing the listing agreement and advising them. We're completing it based on what they want to do. We're not telling them what to do. Mm-hmm. We're supporting what they want to do. The offer, depending on who you represent, you're also providing the information in the appropriate blocks on the offer.
Filling in the blanks.
Right, that the buyer is telling you to do.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue we have in real estate right now is agency. I think realtors violate agency all the time. I'm on a soapbox.
Like that doesn't have a lot to do with fair housing.
No, I know, but we're talking about other things.
Bringing it back around.
Well, it can, but now I lost it. It went right over my head.
I think I've been seeing some language, right, in listings that say do not provide any love letters.
Yep.
Right.
But in talking to a few, it sounds like that's more on the side of the listing agent, which might make sense because the seller doesn't really know necessarily, but I've heard some agents say, I don't send it separately, I make it part of the offer, so I'm sure it goes in.
It has to go with the offer if it's made part of the offer.
Yeah.
So
And then
then
you
it
have
has
to
to be
present
reviewed.
it, right, as a listing agent, however it comes in.
You would, but I would recommend though the National Association of Realtors, because of the potential, the can of worms that a buyer love letter opens up. They do not recommend including a buyer love letter. I mean, there's ways to get around everything,
Sure.
but if we have examples actually where consumers have called us and said we didn't get that house, and I'm pretty sure it's because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that's a shame.
And that's not always the case. Obviously, if there's 12 offers on a home, you don't know what the deciding factor was.
Right.
Was it that
Sure.
they removed a contingency that was important to you? Was it an all cash offer? You know, there's
Sure.
so many things, but anything that we can do as an industry to remove the perception that shady dealings are happening behind the scene is important. And writing a love letter that says, you know, our 3 kids and 2 dogs will love your house says, I'm a family and I want to live in that house.
And that is a protected
And
status.
that's a protected class.
Yeah.
Isn't that a shame?
Yeah, it is.
Both
it's kind of hard
ways.
to believe, but it truly is.
Yeah.
I can see it, but
Yeah.
I know.
We teach on that, right? Through the new Realtor orientation, there's a piece of the orientation that's specifically on fair housing, and it's what I say every time is make it about the numbers, not about the people. It's just about can they afford it or not? Do they have the cash? Do they have the financing? That's it.
So why do offers then, because you and I know of an offer, because we had a deal we put together, Ben and Natalie, and they were not the highest offer.
In this market, I think it comes down a lot, yes, to numbers, but also relationships, like you mentioned. Is it somebody that I'm going to want to work with for the next 30 days, whatever it is? Is it a lender that I can trust will come through, that there's a valid pre-approval letter? So it's relationships right now.
We do recommend, you know, especially the days of a buyer's agent simply being your mom's second cousin. Those days are gone.
Yeah.
Buyers need to be educated about who's going to represent them the best in the transaction and interview agents. Find those agents that are well respected in the industry, that their fellow agents know will be able to get the deal closed. So finding qualified professionals who know what they're doing, who understand what it's like to negotiate in this market, to write offers on offers and still find the way to get that one accepted when no one else could.
Right.
That's a huge factor right now in this marketplace. So buyers need to advocate for themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Recently, I just got an accepted offer on a property, and while it was in delayed, yeah, 2 of them. I had 2 offers on one property. Yeah, but the arrows are still stuck in my back. So I get the phone call from Patty. Could you just let me know how this happened? How did you get an accepted offer before the start date? I said, why are you asking? We've had some complaints. I said, by whom? She says, by realtors. And I'm like, okay. I said, well, I had 2 offers come in. The seller decided to take one of those offers.
Well, it's not. So what's wrong with that, I guess? Is that not ethical to do
No,
that?
You got to walk a line, though.
There's a fine line. As long as there is. So our policy is that you cannot show a property that's in a delayed status. So if
or market it.
Well, no, you can market it.
You can?
It's in the delayed status as long as it's in the MLS.
Okay.
It just won't go out to any of the syndication sites like Realtor.com.
Right. Exactly.
But you cannot show the property, and so there's always the question. Agents will ask, well, did they show it? Is that why there's an offer? And so that's the clarification. That exactly.
Right.
Sight unseen offers happen, and so that doesn't mean what he did is wrong. In fact, it sounds like it wasn't. But agents will ask the question because they want to know why they didn't get their folks in there first.
They're mad that they didn't think of it.
They're mad because
that's what it is.
They're jealous.
Well,
they're jealous.
So they learned something.
They did.
That's not bad.
Well, I hope
That's
they did.
bad.
Because I'm going to tell you, because part of what we had today was with our numbers is, there are 8 delayed listings in Sun Prairie right now. And a good agent has got a buyer out there, and they're coordinating those delays and telling them about it. Now, that's okay to do. You can do it as a buyer's agent. Now, the listing agent can't show it until there's an accepted offer that says with visual inspection within 3 days or whatever, 2 days, 48 hours, 24 hours. The contract makes everything happen on it.
Right.
So we talked about this before. Why would you put a property in delayed status? What are some reasons why people would choose to do that?
You go first.
I mean, the things that we hear about most often are, they needed to get the paint redone, or they needed to replace that carpet, and the agent really wants to get that listing contract signed so that they can begin the process of marketing it. But it's just not quite ready for public consumption. So that's really why the delayed status was put in place. It has morphed over the years, especially as the inventory became so tight, that some do use it as a marketing technique. But we, as the MLS, believe that an active live listing where every consumer has the ability to look at that home serves both the buyers and the sellers the best. And so we always advocate, if you have any intention of selling it when it's off market, just get it live so that it can reach the most eyeballs.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the way it should be. But what's happening right now is it's being used as a strategy to add to the feeding frenzy that's out there.
Yeah.
Go live on Thursday, open on Sunday, offers on Monday to be reviewed. But there's a little sentence in there. Seller has the right to accept at any time. Which I kind of like that, because some people will hold their offers till Sunday, even Monday till the deadline, and then submit them. Others will be very, assertive, and they'll get the information there.
Well, that's one of those things. Understand what your agent knows about that market, and make sure that they are aggressive and advocating for you, regardless of what the listing says on that day.
Yeah.
Ultimately, sellers have control over their property.
They do.
Really, the only time that they can't control it is when it comes to something like fair housing. They can't add a stipulation that would limit a protected class from being able to buy that property. But they have the ability, if they get an offer that they like, to say yes before any deadlines, unless it's written into the contract ahead of time.
Right, exactly.
Some people don't want people going through their house.
People want it over with.
Yeah,
they
just
want it
give
done.
me the best. If that looks like a good one, maybe it's cash, and it's a really good offer. Done. Right.
The difference between number of people through your property today and number of people through your property 10 years ago is pretty substantial.
Oh my gosh.
So what are you introducing to your house? Not everybody's okay with that, so it makes sense.
I had another property that I listed. We had 14 showings set up in a 2-day period of time. It just hit like boom within hours.
So you got to be gone all day, right?
Well,
just go away.
Well, and we did. We planned it that way, where they would go up to their other house.
No, go up to the Dells and get a water slide or something.
Oh, there you go.
Fun, right?
A mini vacation. Why not?
I like your thinking. What I was going to say is, I had 2 agents out of that number call me, saying, "Hey, what are your sellers looking for other than price?
There you go.
What are they looking for?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Wow, thanks for asking." But it just amazes me. So I always make sure I do that. And then I love the comment. They want highest and best. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I had no idea. I was going to do the lowest offer and hope you would take that.
Lowest and worst? That's not what you want?
But do they need a little extra time before they move out? Do they have another house already? Have they found it? What's going on? Conversation. And this does tie to the Realtors Association.
The theme is work with a professional and ask questions, ask how they present offers. How do you do that? What questions do you ask? Do you email it? Do you call? What kind of relationships do you have with other agents? All this stuff is so important.
I do want to tell everybody real quick, I just want to go over Sun Prairie's numbers and give you an indication on a couple of things. So let's start with the sellers right now. Sellers, if you're out there, we don't have any houses. I told you, there's 7 houses available. There are 10 that are listed on the market. 3 of those are new construction. They do not exist. They're ghost listings. And so you have 7 properties for sale. Why is that important to you, Mr. Seller? Because right now you have an opportunity, because of lack of inventory, to capture the highest equity that you can on your home. Now I know, as Laura and I tell you every week, I know that you're sitting there, well, I don't want to move. or where am I going to go? They all sound like that. Usually it's Bill Murray, by the way. Bill, where am I going? But it's true. Where am I going to go? And I don't want to move twice. But here's what I want to say to you, though, is if you're a seller and you're thinking about this, you want to sell your house, now is the time to do it, because you're going to put an extra 10, 20, 30,000 in your pocket. Probably. Maybe. Could be. But wouldn't you take advantage of this and then go and rent for 6 months? Because now you're a cash buyer and you can go in and you control the negotiations. So on your next house, your next property, you can say, I've got cash and I'll close in 7 days.
Yep.
I'll let you stay there for 25 days, 30 days, whatever, but I'll pay cash in 7 days. No contingency, something like that. That's the advantage.
That's the
right
name of
now.
the game right now.
Right.
No contingencies.
Correct. Buyer side, if you're in the buying market, if you want to buy a house now, still do it. Interest rates, 4.5%?
No, higher.
5%?
Close.
Man, didn't I say June? 5.2.
Yeah.
I did. I said 5.
Did
I
not
got a bet.
want you to be right.
I got a whole
For
dollar on
lots
this.
of reasons.
I got a whole dollar on this.
Yeah.
Call Switzerland, move that money around.
Yeah, right.
That money's gone.
There's options.
But we're
though,
still
right?
low. 5% is still low out
It
there.
is.
So don't hesitate any longer. If you, Ben and I were talking about this. He bought in January, just a little over 3, and look where it is today. His smart thinking got a house with a good interest rate.
Mhm.
It's 5 today. It could be 10 tomorrow.
No.
Don't even put that out there.
No.
No, I know, but I had to
That's
tell
not
her
gonna
that.
happen.
You know, the important thing right now is that folks are aware of the difference in what a percentage in interest rate could mean on your actual mortgage.
Yeah.
We have had such low mortgage rates for the last 3, 4, 5 years
I know.
that it's been able to semi-absorb some of the price increases without it necessarily dramatically affecting the monthly payment. Talk to your lender about what these differences are doing right now.
Absolutely.
And why it might be important for you to start looking if you've been on the fence, or to explore down payment assistance if you don't quite have enough to make that 3.5%, or look into options that are zero down payment if you're able. But talk to your lender about what the difference may be now versus in 6 months.
Well, you know
People are
what's happening.
considering-
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean
People
to
are
interrupt you.
considering ARMs again now
Oh, they are?
because of
Ooh.
that.
Oh, I'm not.
I know.
Ooh.
I know. I haven't really
Those are
talked
like
a
love
whole lot
letters.
about
No.
ARMs. Well, I mean, it's all about education. So you have to know what your time frame is. Do you reasonably see yourself, selling within 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? But things can change. They do change.
Maybe a
So,
10-year arm would be good.
Yeah. There's all kinds of
What's a 10-year arm?
options. It's going to be
4.5.
maybe.
Can I buy it down?
Honestly, a 10-year arm and a 30-year fixed haven't seen a whole lot of difference in interest rate. They're a little bit lower, but not much. You're going to see much more when you get into the 3, 5, 7, but then that's where the risk increases too. So you have to.
It can go up 2% of the total.
Most arms are structured that way, not all. That it could increase by 2% when it renews.
Since we're talking about this, let's define what an arm is.
Yeah.
And that 2% we're talking about, please.
Adjustable rate mortgage, that's what it stands for. So, like, for example, if you did a 5-year arm, it would mean that your rate is fixed for 5 years. After that, it can adjust depending on what's going on in the market. And usually it's every 1 year, every 2 years after it could adjust. And then there's usually a cap. So it can't exceed by more than 2%, let's say. And when we're qualifying people, we need to look at worst case. What's the worst your rate could be, and can you still qualify based on that?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's education. Like, don't just go into an arm not knowing what that means for you. You really need to know. But some people are considering it because of where rates are at right now and affordability.
Well, I think it would be a good risk with a 7-year, 5 or 7 year, with 2%. I mean, 2% is a big jump over the term of that, but it can't go up 2% in 1 year.
But this is one
Correct.
of those examples too where using a lender who is really
Knowledgeable.
who puts you first as the client as opposed to making that closing is
Yeah.
incredibly
Thank you.
important, because what we saw a lot with the Great Recession and what happened there was that populations, and specifically minority populations, were really targeted by kind of crooks or mortgage lenders.
Subprime.
Subprime, oh, it'll
High
be
risk
fine,
lending.
you'll be able to refinance. Turns out they weren't. The market
Right.
crashed,
Yeah.
and minority populations specifically saw bigger numbers of foreclosures. I mean, everyone got foreclosed on, but minority populations took a huge hit. And so using a lender who you trust, who you know is going to put you above the closing
Mhm.
is key in
Yeah, it
this
is.
whole process. It is not worth it to get yourself into a home
Right.
and not be able to build the generational wealth.
Right.
And this is where we go back and say, local, 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 local. Please, local people. Like one sitting in the studio right here. There's other people, Bank of Sun Prairie. There's others. Local,
There's
local,
a lot
local.
of good lenders around.
There
A lot.
are.
And it doesn't hurt you to shop around. It really doesn't. I feel like you learn a lot more about your home buying process, about what options there might be out there, because not every lender offers the same options. So talking with a few, I wouldn't have your credit pulled
No.
over and over again. Don't do that.
No.
But you can ask a lot of questions and find out a lot about how responsive they are, how well they know their job, what programs they have, do they listen to you, do they want to know what matters to you, what you were just talking about. So
Sure.
I think realtors and lenders, anybody, everybody, talk to a few.
Sure.
Why not?
What's really important here as a buyer, if you're a buyer right now, you need to be, if you're going to get a loan, you need to have already been in the process. And all you're waiting for is an appraisal now.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you don't go look for a house to write an offer and you haven't even spoken to a lender yet. You're done.
Well, you won't get
You won't get
an
approved.
accepted offer.
You will not get an accepted offer at
Yeah.
all. The second part of this is if you've been shopping and you've written a bunch of offers, you haven't gotten an accepted offer, don't get frustrated. It's easy for me to say, but I've done it. We went through 8 offers ourselves before Terry and I bought our house.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I want you to say, here's what I want you to say to your realtor that you're working with. Ask them about delayed properties. Ask them about it. What's delayed? What's sitting there delayed? Ask them about expireds. Go back and let them go back in history. And sometimes, because we have their phone numbers, we have the contacts, go back and that's how you'll find the deal that you're looking for with less competition.
Maybe ask what their strategy is for helping you to find a home.
Bingo.
Like, do they just set you up on a search and then, hey, let me know when you see one pop on that interests you?
Right.
Or do you do more than that?
Right.
Do you look for expireds and delayeds and
Right.
all those
Exactly.
others?
So let's go back to, I want to talk about some things that the our association does in the way of lobbying with some things that are going on at the Capitol that really benefit people that they have no idea about. They have no idea that their realtors are throwing, see, that's the southern side of me coming out, the realtors.
At least you don't have that second A, realtor.
Oh,
that one,
that's
that
right.
one crosses the line.
It's not realtor, it's realtor.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, my goodness.
So realtors invest in this. We have a PAC that we use to support you in the ownership of your homes. And there's a variety of different things that are out there that we can talk about. One is the Homeowners Association. Now you can talk about that.
I can talk about that. So,
This is a good one.
Just like condo associations, many neighborhoods have a homeowners association, and they have certain things. They can have fence requirements and shoveling requirements and the color of your garage requirements. There are really no limit, honestly, what they can do. But what we've found in the industry is that those rules are sometimes not easy to find, not always updated. And so our Wisconsin Realtors Association actually just recently passed some legislation that creates a central housing HOA depository
Mechanism.
for these HOAs, so that anyone who is looking to buy in XYZ neighborhood will be able to access documents for that homeowners association. So they'll know that RVs are only allowed on the street between 6 and 7 p.m.
Yeah.
And all of those little things that can happen.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily fix some of the conflict that can happen in HOAs. It doesn't regulate what an HOA can require in any way, but it tells you as the homeowner before you make that offer what you might be looking at.
That's huge. That's really huge. There's another one that has not been assigned yet, and it's about easement, 40-year easements. You want to talk about that?
Well, this one is an interesting one because not very many people know about it.
This is costly.
Including individuals in the industry. 40 years ago,
No.
a little more than 40 years ago, they passed some legislation that said that all easements will expire in 40 years unless they've been negotiated to continue, and negotiated at a later date. Well, 40 years came and went, everyone forgot about it, and then these easements started expiring, and it created a lot of conflict. Neighbors who've always shared a driveway suddenly saying, actually, no, that's my property, and that easement is no longer, and we'll take your $20,000 to get that easement reinstated.
Yeah, wow.
So we were able to, or I should say, the Wisconsin Realtors Association and their amazing team, and with the support of our members, we're able to pass legislation to help correct those issues, so that those easements, unless there's a reason for it to have expired, will continue in perpetuity.
Yeah, that would have been an ugly one, Ruth. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine having to cross land to go to your house, but now you can't until you pay somebody $20,000?
Yeah. Well, and we're a beautiful land of lakes and rivers, and so easements regarding access to those lakes and rivers is fundamental to being in Wisconsin, and so it was the right thing to do for consumers and for the citizens of each of our communities.
Thank goodness, but most wouldn't have known unless it came up and their neighbors said, oh, sorry, now you cannot use that unless you pay me. So that's not a fun way to find out. I had one thought about what you first started talking about, the HOA, condo associations, thinking of equal opportunity in affordable housing. Isn't there still some language I've understood in some of those that were written maybe long time ago and could be discriminatory about who lives there? And
I hadn't heard
is anything
this.
being done about that, do you know?
So there is, I mean, pre-1968 there were really no requirements that said that you couldn't limit a development or a building to whites only. So sometimes those were written into their association. I know, close your jaw there.
I know.
It
blows me away.
If you've ever had the opportunity, or honestly tragedy, to read the book The Color of Law, it goes over the discrimination that has taken place in our nation against specifically black homeowners. And they talk quite a bit about homeowners associations and developments that were targeted at individuals who are only white. Now, because of the Fair Housing Act, anything that's written into an HOA document that is discriminatory is invalid. It cannot be enforced. It will not be enforced by our courts. But that doesn't mean that it isn't there still sometimes. And so there are organizations out there who are helping HOAs, and sometimes these HOAs, most of the time these HOAs don't enforce it. They have no intention of enforcing it. They don't want it in there any more than you do, but it's a legal process. It's a legal document. You have to go and get it handled by an attorney, and that's not always a priority. So there are some organizations out there that are going out to help. We haven't actually heard very many examples in the Madison area specifically, in Sun Prairie, because first of all, Sun Prairie, we've seen a lot of new development, and they're obviously not going into any of those newer developments. But also, it's a more progressive community, so some of that stuff didn't happen as much. Now, you honestly go over to Milwaukee, and there might be some more remnants of that. But again, like I said, with the Fair Housing Act in place, those provisions are not enforceable in any way. So even if you see them, ignore them and understand that you, no matter what's the color of your skin or who your family is, have every right to be in that neighborhood just like anyone else.
That just blows me away.
I know.
I mean,
it's amazing
2022.
that was a thing, but
2022. We're talking about our guest today is Ruth Hackney. She's the CEO of the Realtors Association of South Central Wisconsin. We're talking about affordable housing, fair housing, workforce housing, and I wanted her on here because I thought this was a great kickstart to the month, April being fair housing, and she's just a wonderful resource. She's very dynamic. How about that? Well, I do. I believe I'm not, I don't blow smoke, do I? Much?
Well, sometimes.
Oh my gosh. I do. And I'm so proud of our association, though, because of what we do on a daily basis. And affordable housing is one of those things. And I know that here's a here's a blurb from Tom Larson, who's Senior Vice President of Legal and Public Affairs for WRA, Wisconsin Realtors Association. He said this in an article, Removing Local Barriers to Workforce Housing. He said, Wisconsin's housing shortage is also taking a toll on employers as well as our economy. Wisconsin employers are finding it increasingly difficult to recruit workers unless the nearby area has attractive, affordable housing options. Unless this workforce housing problem is fixed, now get this, Wisconsin will be unable to attract the skilled workers necessary for our state and our local economies to thrive. I mean, that's powerful. Mm-hmm. He's saying if we don't do something, we're going to fall apart, or we could fall apart. And what I like about what we're doing as an association is right now I'm looking at 9, 10 bills that are in our state legislature, Senate and House, that are working to address this. Whether it's multifamily, working at a housing tax credits for multifamily, or shovel-ready workforce housing sites, municipal workforce housing incentives, sales tax exemptions, WIDA workforce housing rehabilitation loans, regulatory reform, which we're going to talk about here in 2 seconds, local housing investment funds prohibiting certain property tax assessments. I mean, we are, as a group, working aggressively, I would say, to do something about this, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah, we call ourselves the Realtor Party. We are not a Democrat. We are not a Republican.
Right.
We believe in housing for all. Mm-hmm. We believe that homeownership is the key to creating generational wealth. And so we are the Realtor Party, and we will stand for housing, and we will defend it for consumers who aren't able to come together and have a voice, or their voice.
I enjoy meeting with legislators.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you got to remember that they put their pants on just like we do. Sometimes a skirt. I don't wear a skirt, but you know. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, and people today, because politics is so volatile and so polarized, it can be uncomfortable. My Terry will just roll her eyes and I don't want to hear about it. When city council position came up this year, she asked me not to run because it was not fun last time for her. And so I get that. But we still need to understand that people like Gary Hebel and Melissa Agard are people that have our interest and they want to help us in the process.
It's easy to forget that politicians are humans.
Yes.
And they're our neighbors, and they want to do what's good for their communities. And unless they're hearing all voices, they may not know the whole story. So it's important to talk to them, even if you do have a different opinion.
They're very approachable.
Yeah.
And I had never gone to Realtor and Government Day.
Yeah.
This was the first time I went.
You're welcome.
And I thought, yeah, it reminded me.
I dragged her.
But I was really impressed with the full room of people that were there. And so these are your realtors. For those of you listening, we're in a community of realtors who really do care, mm-hmm. and they show up mm-hmm. to protect you. So for those that think that realtors, like, they're a tour guide, they take you through a house and they make a ton of money and that's all they do, it's not true. So not true.
I called Gary Hebel and I said, hey, I'm going to be at the Capitol. I want to stop by to see you. Probably be about 1:30, 2 o'clock. He says, why don't you just come by the house?
Approachable.
I'm
there you go. There's a question. Or is it Sabrina?
Sabrina.
Yeah.
Sabrina Fryer. Ruth, can you touch on the FHA VA mandatory clauses? The VA is the best program available out there for military buyers. There seems to be confusion with sellers not accepting those offers in case appraisals come in low due to that form. If they, hang on, I gotta expand it.
You can speak on that, can you?
Yeah.
That's a government form.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that there sometimes are more restrictions on some of the government loan products. But again, if you're working with a lender who understands that process and a realtor who understands that process, they're no more risky than a conventional loan.
Can you
or
wait to have them
close
sign
to
it
no more.
until the appraisal is in? Maybe wait to have them sign it. If there's no issue, there's no issue. What's going on with you?
Bill has a face.
Right? What's going on in there?
Lead-based paint.
Wow.
Railings are too wide. I could go down the list.
Yeah.
And they won't pass the inspection.
Well, I think the bigger problem is that in a competitive market like this, government loan, just
Right.
like down payment assistance,
Right.
it's not impossible, but it's so hard to get them accepted. Sellers
Right.
don't want to put in carbon monoxide detectors if they're not there. They don't want to do anything if they don't, even if
They
it's
don't
something
have
simple.
to today.
They don't have to. So they want simple, they want highest, that's it. So,
Yeah.
it's
Sabrina,
sad,
you've
though.
got a great question, and I appreciate that. And I'd like to talk about that on a different show if we can. Maybe next week, and why don't you come in and be my guest host?
There you go.
How about that, Sabrina? You just got offered to take Laura's seat for the week. Oh my gosh. I want to talk about this. So one of the things is regulatory reform that's on the list that Tom Larson put together. And he's talking about the municipalities and the added cost and processes and quagmire. Oh, I didn't say swamp.
Quagmire's a good word.
But the quagmire. I mean, because it is overwhelming with the cost associated with bringing a development or building a home in the city of Sun Prairie. It's outrageous. And without giving specific numbers, we know from Tim Rail being here and talking about this that some of the developments can be 18 months. We know Lindsay Hagens was in here talking about her development in Madison, Sun Prairie School District, that it's been almost, how many, was it almost 3 years and $1 million+
Crazy.
before she broke ground. And that's got to stop, because that cost people is passed on to you as a consumer.
The solution to housing is not simply regulatory reform, but
Correct.
it is a combination of regulatory reform, creating housing products that are more diverse. Diversity in housing is key. Honestly, we may have to realistically look at a situation where tiny homes or condominiums are the acceptable first-time buy for someone, so that they can build up the equity that they need to get into a single-family home.
Sure.
Things have shifted, and that needs to be acknowledged. But it is going to take multiple avenues to get us out of the supply issues we're currently facing.
Exactly. And governmental reform, the municipalities, I mean, that will take revenue out of the budget. And if we took our fees out of Sun Prairie, it'd be about $2 million. We take half of them out, $2 million. $2 million. So they have to find that $2 million, is the way I say it. Now, what Bill Connors would say is that he'd have to increase taxes by $2 million. It would increase that taxes on it. But it depends on who you're talking to and how it's laid out. But that is a big part of it. The other part is construction and what's the product that they're using. And part of that process, that approval process, are they being told what to use? Is it underground parking, or is it parking lots with carports? Those are the things that we need to work on, and that again goes back to Timmy Rail. I'm the only guy who calls him Timmy. I know.
I'm going to call him Timmy from now on.
Oh,
See how he reacts
and
to
he'll
that.
tell you. You've been talking to Bill Baker, haven't you? I've got friends of mine. It's Billy.
Yeah. Well, if somebody calls me Ruthie, I know that they know my father.
Aw.
Aw, okay, that's cute. I like Ruthie.
But it is important for us to know this, and it's important, I think, for people in either Madison. It doesn't matter where you live. This is a part of the revenue structure for cities. And it needs to be reviewed. It needs to be changed. It needs to be re-enhanced.
Honestly, I mean, what we've seen to the negative is that, well, you can no longer put covenants on a development restricting the race of somebody that can live there. We have seen zoning and ipso facto NIMBYism, the not in my backyard,
Right.
use zoning as a tool to keep undesirables from their community.
Oh, wow.
And so
Undesirables.
it's incredibly important that communities create policies that are predictable, that are easy to understand, and that allow for diversity in housing so that
Sure.
everyone has the opportunity to participate in homeownership.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the property or the development that's been approved for Bird and Egri is going to be a combination of rental. They're going to be like duplexes, and then, but the rent's going to be between $1,800 and $2,000. And then they're going to have a multi-story. So the people that bought the house right before the property spent $700,000. They're now going to have a 3-story apartment, multifamily structure there that they didn't know about. And then, but that development is needed. sometimes I don't agree with the choice of locations, not because of NIMBY, because it's not well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
Is it close to this property or this area? Is it close to the bus line? No, there isn't a bus line.
Well, that's why community planning is so important.
Right.
But it's important that, again, kind of like we talked about with your legislators, ensure that there's all voices. Sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Yep.
The people who are complaining the most end up impacting those policies, and they're not forward thinking. They're not thinking of the child who was born today who wants to be a homeowner in 25 years.
Sure. Well, can you imagine this? I mean, so you're a developer and you're planning a home for about $350,000 a year ago. Just a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Today, your plans better change because the increase in the rent and the cost of all the supplies, the lack of labor, and residential.
Well, something Laura said I think is really important, that they've actually done some research and they show that specifically minority populations, and honestly Wisconsin is one of the worst in terms of rates of black homeownership, Asian homeownership, and Hispanic homeownership. And those cultures are very prideful cultures, and so they ask Laura for assistance once, they maybe make a couple offers, they maybe get denied, and they decide this is not for me, instead of really understanding that right now in 2022 this is the way that the market works. You're going to make 12 offers.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you or your loan or anything about what's happening is unusual.
Mm-hmm.
So really to educating yourselves and not being scared of asking those tough questions and not being scared of reevaluating every 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what we need? Are we in the right community still? Are we looking at the right kind of home still?
Mm-hmm.
Will we look at condominiums? Will we look at townhouses to adjust the opportunity for you? So ensuring that everyone is experiencing losing multiple offers. I bought a house in 2020. I think it was my 5th offer by the time I got it accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone is experiencing this, and right now what I went through is child's play. So understanding it's not personal.
No.
And keep on being vigilant, keep on working with professionals who know what they're doing and are advocating for you and putting your needs and your future success above everything else.
Yeah. I
mean, that's the key right now. And, as a community, we can do better in terms of creating diversity in homeownership.
Absolutely.
Yes, we do.
I agree with you 100% on that. Ruth Hackney, thanks for being on this show. We're almost at the end. We've got about 3 minutes left. I'll give you closing comments. What would you like to say to people that are out there that are concerned about buying a house, selling a house, or affordable housing? They can't find a house or someplace to live. They can't find a home.
Even to rent. Yeah.
Well, to me, renting is a home. I mean, that's your home.
It is. Yeah.
You don't own
It's
it,
housing.
but you're still making that investment.
Yep.
I mean, shelter and a place to rest your head is one of the key fundamental rights of individuals in our community. So if you are struggling to find a place to live, absolutely talk to professionals. There's organizations like Moving Out that can do a lot to help put people in homes that need it, that need the extra support. But for those actually in the market for ownership, I think the key is, ironically, aggression and patience. Those two things together. Be aggressive, go out there, check those properties, check the delays, check everything. Be willing to, take some risks, because what economists are saying is that even with interest rates going up, because of the supply issues, we're not going to see property prices decline. This is not the Great Recession. This is not 2008, 2010.
No.
But what we will see is fewer people actually in the market. So if you're able to participate still, be patient. There will be at a point where interest rates do get enough people out of the buyer off the fence on the other side of it, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So be patient, but don't be afraid to be aggressive as well, and stand up for your own rights. If you feel like, come back to that fair housing thing, if you feel like something went on that shouldn't have, if you feel like your offer was passed up, if you feel like an agent didn't take you seriously or a lender didn't take you seriously, say something. You have every right to be a part of this market.
And nothing will change if you don't speak up.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's the thing. Yes. I like what you said.
Well
You have to use a professional in this world.
Yep.
In this market,
More so now than ever.
big
Yes.
time, big time. I don't want you taking advantage of. Folks, thanks a lot for joining us today. We really appreciate that. Ruth Hackney, you're awesome. You may have to fill her seat one day. Can I call you and say hey?
She's doing a great job.
I know,
don't
but
need to fill anything.
well, she takes vacations and goes places and stuff. You'd be
Next
great.
week I'm not
Wouldn't she be
gonna
great?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Wouldn't she be great in that seat? I know
Yes,
she would. Oh
she'd
my
be
gosh.
great, yes.
Hey, so Prairie, we really appreciate you and what you do for us, and thank you so much. It shows by the awards that we win for this show. I mean, we really appreciate that so much, and your input is so important to make this show the best that it can be. And so when you see us, don't forget, give us your ideas, give us your thoughts. If there's something you want to hear about, let us know, because we are here for you. Thanks, Sun Prairie, and we'll see you back here on the radio next Wednesday. Bye, Sun Prairie.
Bye, Sun Prairie.
Take care.
There we go.
All right.
Yeah, so did you ask Serena other than on the air?
Automation.
Serena Fryer? She's a lender. Well, she was with Wells Fargo forever.
Okay.
She
Oh,
was
I do. Okay.
Cornerstone.
All right, we're on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah. She's been a lender for a really long time.
She's a good lady.
She is.
She's one of the good ones.
Agree. We have a lot
Bye,
of
Facebook.